My name is Reem Bahdet. I'm the Egyptian Cultural Counselor, and thank you very much for coming this evening. I can see a number of faces who are the first time to come here. So I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Egyptian Bureau for Cultural and Educational Affairs to come in. And we normally have two events per month, 2 to 3 events. So if you like to register on our mailing list downstairs, you're very welcome, and we will be happy to send you our events on a monthly basis. Tonight, we have the privilege of listening to Dr. Philippe. Dr. Philippe Mansel, I think a number of you know him. He was born in London in 1951. But he didn't live in London only. He lives in London, Paris, Beirut, and Istanbul. Dr. Philippe Mansel is a historian of France and the Middle East. He focuses on courts, cities, and cosmopolitanism. He has a number of books, so we only mentioned a few of them actually. One is a history of Constantinople as a capital of the Ottoman Empire. And one is talking about the history of Smyrna, Alexandria, and Beirut, Lebanon, and the rest of it. And the most recent book is History of Aleppo since the Ottoman conquest in 1516. His books were translated into French, German, Italian, Spanish, Turkish, Greek, and Arabic. Dr. Mansel writes for The Spectator, the Art newspaper, and the Times literary supplement. He is currently writing the bibliography of Louis XIV. Dr. Mansel is a founding committee member of the Society for Court Studies. He is also a member of the Levantine Heritage Foundation. And in 2012, he received the London Library Life in Literature Award. In 2015, he was given the Order of Arts and Letters in France and the Order of the Crown in Belgium. We are very honored that Dr. Philippe Mansel is speaking to us today. And maybe on a side note, I should thank my friend who introduced me to Philippe, Griselda and Christine. Thank you very much. But I should also say that actually the word Alexandria also brought many people to this event.
Yes.
Yes. So many of friends of the Bureau are from Alexandria or attached to Alexandria in some way or the other, or lived in the past in Alexandria. And they are not necessarily Egyptians, but they are Alexandrians. Yes. So thank you everyone for coming, and I guess this is why we're here, to hear about Royal Alexandria. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Reem, for this wonderful invitation. Thank you all so much for coming. And I'm talking about Alexandria as a city because I think cities have tended to be obscured by concentration on the history of states or religions or races, particularly at the moment. But in fact, a city could itself be a political and cultural force. And particularly, perhaps, Alexandria in the 19th century in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight. And it's an aspect of Alexandria that I think has been forgotten. People have talked about cosmopolitanism, imperialism, nationalism, the 1952 coup, but actually it revived in the early 19th century because of one man and one ruler, and that was Mohammed Pasha, and his desire to make a modern business city and his favorite residence. In 1806, Chateaubriand, traveling around the Middle East, as a lot of people did, called it the saddest and most desolate place in the world. This is a picture at the same time by Turpin de Crissé, not generally known, The artist hadn't actually been there, he's done it from prints. It's rather romanticised. Anyway, it had only 6,000 people, but within 40 years it had leapt to 100,000 people. And it had become, from being an Egyptian port, a cosmopolitan port city. And that is due to Muhammad Ali. And like Alexander the Great, Alexandria's founder, Muhammad Ali came from Macedonia, the other side of the Mediterranean. He was the son of a Turkish tobacco merchant, born in the port of Kavala. And helped by Egyptians yearning for law and order, by 1805, he had forced the Ottoman government to appoint him formally governor of Egypt. By 1811, he had done what other Ottoman officials were hoping to do in other provinces, and he established his own government. At least by 1819, probably earlier, he was called not Vali, or governor, but His Highness the Viceroy. And as early as 1812, the French consul, his friend Bernardino Drovetti, and above all, Alexandria was a city of consuls as well as of Muhammad Ali Pasha, wrote that he had gigantic ideas and eagerly seized every opportunity to shake the yoke of prejudices. And I think that is coded language for saying he's not very religious. And he's the first non-Christian ruler to send regular batches of young men to be educated in Europe, as is still happening. He introduced a system of quarantine to prevent the spread of plague in 1817, long before the rest of the Ottoman Empire. In 1825, he allows Christians to ring church bells in Egypt, and he said that among so many religions, it would be a misfortune if one was not correct. So I think that shows he's really quite skeptical. And above all, he's a merchant. The great Egyptian chronicler Al-Jabati wrote, with distaste, the Pasha tried to raise money by all methods. He wants his slightest desires to be executed without any comment. And he thought only of taking other men's profits. So right from the beginning, Alexandria is a city of money and trade, and he visits Alexandria to sell directly to foreign merchants the wheat, rice, and other vegetables which he had requisitioned from Egyptians in exchange for European goods, which he then sold on to Egyptian merchants at prices fixed by himself. And an English traveller, and there's some wonderful travel accounts of this time, because it was the thing to do to go and see Muhammad Ali in Alexandria. James St. John found that among foreigners, every look, word or smile of Muhammad Ali Pasha is subjected to an arithmetical calculation to ascertain its value in piastres. So, Alexandria may be romantic now, but at the time it was very, very realistic indeed. And some found, to their regret, that the Pasha is, and I quote, not always very attentive to his engagements. So it was risky. This is by a French artist, Baron Denanchet, Cleopatra's Needle. Again, you see how desolate it is. That's an English view, somebody called Cooper. Again, a very small city, Caipe in the foreground. This is a view of the battle, 1801, I think, when the English force out the remaining French troops in Egypt. It's an early English victory over Napoleonic troops. And he asks for foreign help. But Bonaparte's expedition was a total failure. He left nobody behind him, no modern technicians or engineers. They in fact all come thanks to Muhammad Ali Pasha. On your left, you see Clot Bey with the hospital behind him. The first doctor, the first modern doctor of Muhammad Ali Pasha, who institutes modern medical systems, quarantines, injections, and so on. Why? Not because Muhammad Ali was an angel who wanted to improve the health of Egyptians for their own sake, but because he wanted to have better soldiers for his army, because he had extremely ambitious political ideas. On your right is Soliman Pasha, a Frenchman, former Napoleonic officer who helps modernize Muhammad Ali Pasha's troops. And as early as the 1820s, he's introducing conscription into Egypt. This is another foreign technician in Alexandria. I'm sure some of you know who it is. It's a view of Ferdinand de Lesseps, French vice consul, looking out of his window at Alexandria Harbour. And I'm sure you know what he had in Alexandria. By 1818, Muhammad Ali Pasha is spending 4 months a year in Alexandria. By 1822, he's said to be spending all year there. That is the year the consul general moved their offices from Cairo to Alexandria. And another reason why it takes off, it's not just business of Muhammad Ali's ambitions, it's climate, it's cooler than Cairo, so it becomes a summer capital. And cost, the French engineer builds a canal between Alexandria and the western branch of the Nile, which improves Alexandria's supply of drinking water. And Muhammad Ali is also, from his base in Alexandria, revolutionizing the ecology and the vegetables and fruit of Egypt, introducing things like pineapples, bananas, figs, vines, and orange groves, and above all, much better cotton called Jumel cotton. So cotton production rises astronomically in the 1820s, at the same time as the population of Alexandria, and cotton would be the basis of Alexandria's economy. And that is Muhammad Ali's foreign minister, Bogos Nubar Bey from Smyrna, who spoke every language known in the Levant. And this is Muhammad Ali himself, which I'm sure many of you know this, drawn by David Roberts. He's receiving English officers. They're discussing an overland telegraph route from Alexandria to the Red Sea. In the background is the Egyptian fleet, which he's later going to use for his ambitious plan, or he's already used, to conquer Syria and maybe the entire Ottoman Empire, which was his plan in 1839 to 40. I think it's a fantasy view of the palace. There he is himself, painted by David Wilkie, who sent by Queen Victoria around the Ottoman Empire. It's a very, very good likeness. And you can see that he could be quite a charmer when he wanted to be. That's his overlord, Abdulmejid, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, 1839 to 1862. And they are at daggerheads. There is a international crisis, 1839 to 41, which occupies everybody in the governments of Europe. Muhammad Ali's army almost gets to Istanbul. It is said that many people in Istanbul were so fed up with Ottoman misgovernment that they would have preferred him because he was ruthless but very efficient. But in fact, Britain and the other powers of Europe intervened to stop him. Why? Because Muhammad Ali was backed by France. They thought he would be the avenger of Bonaparte. And there was a tremendous French cultural investment and industrial and economic investment in Egypt at this time. And it's a very, very complicated story. It's not really about the city of Alexandria. When the British fleet threatens Alexandria, Muhammad Ali backs down, but he does in Alexandria receive a firman of investiture from the Sultan, making the governorship hereditary. And that's exactly what other people wanted in other provinces of the Ottoman Empire, to make their power formally and legally hereditary in their family. And that firman was guaranteed by all the powers of Europe. So European intervention, Muhammad Ali's dynastic ambition, and the weakness of the Ottoman Empire, that is really what starts the Egyptian royal family in power. Starts it and legalizes it. So Muhammad Ali had sort of won. This is his great palace of Ras El Khin, and I hope one day we'll all be able to visit Ras El Khin. It will be a wonderful tourist attraction for people going to Egypt. And you see how it begins very much as an Ottoman house, built in traditional Ottoman style, maybe by craftsmen from the Balkans who would fan out round the Ottoman Empire, building houses every year for the very poor mountainous villages. But the early history is not really well known. You see a sentry in the gate in modern uniform, and soon, from the 1840s, an architect from Livorno arrives called Pietro Avoscani, and the palace begins to look more European, as we'll see later. Portraits, a novelty for the time in Egypt, of Muhammad Ali's own family and of European monarchs were hung on the walls. French furniture was placed in the rooms. And he kept open house for foreigners, for travellers whom he wanted to impress, who brought him news of Egypt. And indeed, this may be, it's obviously very touched up, a daguerreotype, 1839, because the same year it's shown in Paris, it is shown to Mohammed Ali Pasha by Horace Vernet in Alexandria. An English naval officer called Charles Napier wrote, "He was fond of gossiping and said to be informed of everything that is either said or done in Alexandria, and much more likely to receive foreigners than pious Muslims. There were several denunciations of his innovations in sermons, a rebellion by a sheikh who called himself the Mahdi. A French consul wrote that Muhammad Ali had bought most of the ulama, and those opposed to his projects were exiled. Al-Jabati complained that Christians, the enemies of our religion, had become the companions and intimate friends of His Highness, and even, which horrified him, dared employ Muslims as servants." And another factor modernizing Alexandria was the navy. He wanted a modern navy, and he has an arsenal. He has the director of the port is a Frenchman, Besson. At the arsenal, as at the palace, as in some of the businesses already, it was completely international. I quote, "French, English, Italians, Maltese, Arabs, Turks, Armenians, Copts, Arabs of the desert, all work together and understand each other as best they can." And Muhammad Ali would watch the arsenal. He was obsessed with having a modern navy, and sometimes he would go sea bathing because it was said to be good for his health. So already it's a summer resort. That is his son, who succeeds him in the 1850s, Said Pasha, a very rare photograph, the builder who signed the appalling contract with the Suez Canal Company of De Lesseps, cost Egypt a fortune in investment and bubble human lives. And at this time, he's having a modern square called the Place des Consuls, because the consuls built the residences around it. It's supervised by a Commissione di Ornato, Board of Works, and a lot of Greeks are prominent running the Board of Works and friends of Muhammad Ali. And I think because they're Greeks from northern Greece and from Ottoman ports who spoke Turkish, so they could speak Turkish with Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali did not speak Arabic, so in fact, linguistically, he's closer to Greeks than to the people he's ruling. And until the 1860s, Turkish, not Arabic, was the language of the court and government in Egypt. This is a time when firms are being started in Alexandria. Trade in 1839 going through the port is worth £2,825,000 a year. The Barkers and the Peels and other families establish themselves then, and they last until the 1950s. The Comtesse d'Ormel, 1844, writes that in the broad airy streets of the modern part of Alexandria, he felt he was back in Europe. A very, very familiar remark that many travellers would make for the next 100 years. That is Rasseltine. A bit later, it's already becoming, it's still partly Ottoman, but it's becoming more European. This is the port with Ras Al Tin on the right, now even more European. This is about the 1870s or 1880s. You see how full the port is. It is absolutely packed. It really is a boom city. And as the city expanded and became smarter, it is surrounded by another city of workers' huts. The Egyptians who actually built the city suffered and died for the construction of Alexandria. The huts were single rooms, 6 foot high, covered in white plaster. James and John, who I've quoted before, wrote that they were inferior in comfort and appearance to dog kennels, even to the cabins of the Irish. And the inhabitants' poverty, in his opinion, seemed to have gone beyond the limits of the possible. So Alexandria was built at huge human cost. Well, how are we doing this slide? We go on, more pictures. This is the port again. This is the square I described, the plastic construit. At the end is the Palais Tzitza, built by the Greek consul Tzitza, who was a friend of Muhammad Ali. 1841, he's become semi-independent, a rage for building. When Muhammad Ali died, despite his ruthlessness, he inspired such regret that, the British consul reported, his funeral procession was followed by all the chief Muslim officers, all the consular body, and all the principal merchants and inhabitants. We as Europeans ought in justice with memory to remember that during many years, while a Christian could not walk about Aleppo or Damascus or Turkey, safe from injury or insult. This is a very English remark. The English traveller, the sportsman or the naturalist might wander unarmed about the valley of the Nile with as much safety as midday at Hyde Park. So it's really, and it's now that Alexandria is beginning to be called the key to Egypt. But its very success made it vulnerable and perhaps not a key but a Trojan horse. It's a summer capital with all these merchants and mixed population within range of foreign warships' guns. The great, brilliant, all-seeing novelist Flaubert in 1850 predicted that given its ambitions for India, Britain was bound to become mistress of Egypt. Remember my prediction, he said. So this is Said. He was 30, he spoke French and English with fluency. He preferred the society of Europeans. He preferred Alexandria to Cairo, and that is when things begin to go downhill for Egyptian independence. He signs the Lesseps Convention, 1854. By the time the canal was opened in 1869, the Suez Canal Company had charged so much money and used so much Egyptian labour that it had not only ruined Egyptian lives but also the Egyptian treasury. The number of Europeans goes up. It's soon reached a third of the population, and his successor, Ismail Pasha, who becomes Khedive. This is the English church, which is still there, round what was called the Plastic Consul. This is an old website run by my friend Max Kalkaji, who is now dead. I don't know what's happened to the control of the website. And this was built in a style which I can only call Anglican Islamic, and it's still going on. Now most services are in Dinka for Sudanese refugees rather than in English. This is the first public statue put up in a Muslim country, I think. You see the church in the background. It's Muhammad Ali Pasha on horseback on a plinth of Carrara marble. So the square has become really rather like a European royal square in a European capital with the statue of the ruler in the middle. That is a map of the city. On the left is the old port. You can see the black mass on the peninsula. That is Ras El Tin, which means promontory of figs in Arabic. On the right, the new port. Railways are beginning to arrive. Again, the Egyptian economy is booming, but the government is falling into debt. And inevitably, as Flaubert had predicted, Britain grabs the loot. 1882, there is tension between, exactly like recent events in other countries, there is tension between European bondholders and European banks and governments and the Egyptian government and taxpayer. The Europeans are insisting on debts being paid. First thing to be cut is not interest payments to Europeans, but salaries of Egyptians. There is growing discontent. There is an inevitable incident in Alexandria. So it's a city not as a melting pot, as a volcano about to erupt. It begins with an argument between a Maltese and an Egyptian donkey driver. It escalates. The Europeans had been incredibly allowed to have guns. Egyptians, except for the army, were not. And there's more violence. The main minister of Egypt at the time, Arabi Pasha, was a reformer, a national hero, a liberal, opposed to the autocratic power of the Khedive, of Ismail's son, Ibrahim Pasha. And guess what? The ruler of Egypt sides with the foreigners. Here is the incident. The ruler of Egypt, as every summer, he is in his summer capital, Alexandria, because the weather's better. As the city goes out of control, he withdraws to a palace just outside the city called Mustafa Fazl Palace, and he starts communicating with the Royal Navy, which of course is hovering outside Alexandria. And just by chance, the Liberal Prime Minister, Gladstone, has a vast proportion of his fortune invested in Egyptian government stock, about 30%. And many MPs also had Egyptian investments. So the result is really rather inevitable. Europeans flee. On the 11th of July, 1882, British warships opened fire on the city. The main sound in Alexandria is the crackle and roar of flames, the crash of falling buildings, and the howl of dogs. In the words of the British consular assistant, it becomes an Dante's inferno, a light almost from end to end, the flames running riot from street to street, without any attempt being made to check them. There is looting, and the only object untouched was the statue of Mohammed Ali Pasha. And the commander of the British fleet, Admiral Sir Beecham Seymour, does not let his troops land for several days. Therefore, the city was abandoned to looters. So far, anyway, finally, British sailors and Marines land. There is an incredible description in the Cavafy archive, much of which has been translated in English, of Cavafy, the poet's brother, landing sort of after the British troops and shooting his way back to his office, just killing as he goes. And of course, for the many Greek merchants, the repressive as they were really not repressive enough. And Cavafy's brother says, really, if only they'd hang more Egyptians. So, 10th of July, the Khedive Tawfiq comes back, 14th of July, he comes back to Alexandria, and immediately the British Army and Navy start guarding him. So he's in the control of, willingly in the control of the British. He's turned against his own country. He arrives at Ras El Tin Palace, having been met on the road, and he's received at the foot of the staircase by Admiral Sir Beecham Seymour, i.e. the British Empire has allied with the local ruler against the people. That is the British warships firing on Alexandria. That is them, the sailors having landed and they're dismantling Egyptian guns. And here are some wonderful war photographs by a court photographer called Fiorillo of the ruins of Alexandria after the British bombardment. See, there's nobody in the street. That's the ruined Place des Consuls. That is the Duke of Connaught re-entering Alexandria in August 1882 at the head of the British Army. There are European ladies greeting him. I think that's a bit fantastic. The entire European population had left, and then they slowly came back. And then the British rule is enforced from Alexandria all over Egypt. Even at the time, though, there were voices denouncing that silly and criminal bombardment of Alexandria, which Lord Northbrook at the Admiralty concocted. It was completely unnecessary. And then the diarchy between the Khedive and Britain goes on, and Alexandria plays a key role because every summer the Khedive would arrive. Yeah, this is him arriving. There is a ball given by the local merchants. He stays in Rasseltine or another palace called Montaza, built later, and then he goes off for a summer holiday on the Bosphorus or in Europe and then comes back. And here are some of the institutions that enforced British and Khedivial rule in Egypt. This is the famous Cour Mixte, or Mixed Courts of Alexandria, which removed criminal cases of importance from the control of Egyptian courts, and in effect gave foreigners the right to have foreign judges. And of course they were biased in favor of foreigners, but I have heard some Egyptians say that in time they did have Egyptian judges, and they did have the great blessing of being independent of the Egyptian government. And I think many people would wish for some of that judicial independence today. This is the Bourse. The old Palais Tozitsa has been transformed into the stock exchange. The main things quoted on the Bourse were cotton prices. You see, it's a Franco-Arabic bilingual city. This is a famous picture by an Egyptian artist. I think she's called Margot Badran or a similar name. This is of the screaming stock exchange agents inside the city. Ian Forster says, hearing the noise they made, screaming the cotton price, was like hearing devils in hell. And this is the commercial center of the city, and the language used was French. Because it was not that people particularly loved French, it was the international language of the day, the language everybody could more or less, most educated people could more or less understand. It's the language of the municipality of Alexandria, the language of the entire world. And this was the largest stock exchange at the time outside Europe and America. And another famous institution was the Club Mohammed Ali, the most exclusive club of all, where local elites would do deals. And you can see behind the balustrade there were famous tables where people would comment on all the passers-by. It was named after Muhammad Ali and open certainly to members of the Egyptian royal family and local merchants. And this is another link between Alexandria and Europe. This is the famous royal yacht Makrusa, which still exists, moored in Alexandria Harbour, but we can't visit it. This was built in 1865 in England for the Khedive Ismail. It's the yacht which opened the Suez Canal in 1869 and took two rulers of Egypt into exile, Ismail in 1879 and Farouk, as we shall see, in 1952. And the Palace of Rasseltine is modernized. 1914, the ruler of Egypt, who of course left on the Mahrusa for a summer holiday in Istanbul, is deposed because the British suspect him of being pro-German. Eventually, from 1917, they put in power first Sultan, then King Fuad, a very Alexandrian ruler He spoke with a high spasmodic bark because a bullet had remained stuck in his throat after a quarrel about money in a gambling club in Cairo, and sometimes his bark sounded like a gun being fired. He was completely international. He didn't speak good Arabic. In the words of Lawrence Grafton Smith, a British official who knew him well, he had a taste for cosmopolitan company with a pro-Italian bias in matters of opera, investment and mistresses. And you can see he's redoing Rassaltine in this photograph by somebody called Verrucci. You can see he's got frescoes and the letter F and crowns in the sky. But he was, in his way, a very effective ruler. He helped found a university in Cairo, the Arab Language Academy, and the Arab Music Academy, which established a system of notation. Most Egyptians far preferred the Wafd and Saad Zaghloul, who received a triumphant welcome there in 1921. However, with time, King Fuad became a major political figure. Here is his throne room. Here's another room in Rassaltine, now completely Italianate. Rassaltine has expanded by the 1920s. A huge palace, though in fact it's not much used because the royal family preferred Montaza, which had a garden. Here is Fuad with his young son Farouk, various officials, English governesses, and so on. To the left of Fuad, I think it is Ismail Sidki, an Alexandrian who became Prime Minister later. There he is with a group of princes about to leave on a journey around Egypt. Mohammed, the Prime Minister, is to his left. To his right is Prince Omar Toussaint, who lived in Alexandria, a branch of the royal family, quite popular in Alexandria. He was called the father of Alexandria. And this is the young Farouk, charming, popular, Arabic-speaking, adored when he returned to Egypt to become king in 1936. His sisters are behind him. There he is driving, this is the best photograph I could find, driving with Montaza Palace in the background. He loved cars. His English tutor were trying to make him attend lessons. I don't think he attended a single lesson. He was too busy testing sports cars. And here are some photographs of Alexandrians in the 1940s. This is Agil Salvago, who had a famous Islamic collection. Her husband was president of the Greek community of Alexandria, and in the end she left. She waited 14 hours on the quay at Alexandria when she was leaving in the 1960s. Finally, she managed to get most of her collection out, and it was sold in Athens. Classical antiquities, Islamic antiquities. And Alexandria is beginning to get its own culture. Here are some pictures by Mohammed Said, a great artist of Alexandria, whose niece was Queen Farida, the first wife of King Farouk. These are the Bahri girls, ladies of Alexandria walking along the sea. Sorry about that. This is one of his many nude pictures, now huge prices. And this is a nightclub in Alexandria, the spirit, or a part of the spirit of Alexandria between the wars. Famous already for its nightclubs and the beauty of the ladies. There are travel books which sound like prequels to the Alexandria Quartet at the time. The government continues to move every summer to Alexandria. The British residency alone required a special train, which as it slid past the stations along the route, was saluted by bowing mayors and soldiers standing to attention. Everything seems to be going well. 1940, during celebrations of the 50th anniversary of of the Alexandria municipality, Ahmed Pasha, the Director General, expressed the official view of Alexandria and its future. He praised the spirit of confraternity and solidarity between the Egyptian and foreign elements, and the municipality's particular benevolence for the working class and the poor, a benevolence, well, I wonder how it was expressed. And also he praised the high solicitude of His Majesty the King, who has made of our beautiful city not only the second capital of the kingdom, but also his residence of predilection. Farouk, in some ways, like his family, was a natural Levantine and a natural Alexandrian. He went to nightclubs like this. And his first child was born in Alexandria. The local newspaper, La Réforme, also prophesied the finest destiny for Alexandria as a crossroads of east and west. I quote, a furnace of different races, religions and customs under the aegis of His Majesty King Farouk. And in fact, the capitulations are abolished, 1937. The cours mixtes are finally closed in 1949. Egyptian law henceforth reigns supreme in Egypt. And I'd like to quote the great novelist Naguib Mahfouz, who often went to Alexandria in the summer. Before 1936, before the end of the capitulations, he remembered that many Egyptians had regarded Alexandria, and I quote, as a European city where Italian, French, Greek or English were heard far more often than Arabic. The city was beautiful, so clean one could have eaten off the streets, but all that was for the foreigners. We could only observe from the outside. He's forgetting the Egyptian upper class who benefited from Alexandria as much as anybody. Until the Treaty of 1936, which subjected foreigners to the same law as Egyptians, foreigners were forced to change their attitude. They no longer owned the country. We Egyptians were no longer second-class citizens. They realized they and we would be appearing before the same magistrates. The characteristics of European life were still present, but they became accessible to us as well, and Naguib Mahfouz went to thé dansant and cafes and so on. Alexandria was a European city but belonged to us Egyptians, and he called Alexandria a city where popular joy shone everywhere. And incredibly, in the Second World War, when German and Italian armies were only 60 miles away, you could hear the guns of Alamein in Alexandria. It's the most important naval base for Britain in the Mediterranean. It's really, ships are whizzing in and out, supplying Egypt, supplying England. It's really vital. So it's more international and more important than at any time in its history. Somehow, miraculously, the city remains calm. Workers turn up for the British port, which requires a huge workforce. And rather impressively, February 1943, the Egyptian government opens Université Farouk Premier, as Alexandria University was first called. Chairs in the street, and incredibly, there is a coin you can see in the National Museum in the Villa Basile. It's Arabic, it has two effigies, Alexander the Great and Farouk the First. King Farouk's University, Alexander the Great who established Alexandria, and King Farouk the First is the king. Right? 1361, 1943. And here is the British Benevolent Ball at San Stefano, 1939, the dreaded Sir Miles Lampson and his Italian wife, the British ambassador, in the front. Warships being blown up in Alexandria Harbour. It's the only photo I could find. Anybody who has wartime photographs of Alexandria, please tell me. And here is a sort of Alexandria racing scene of the Barker family going to the races about 1945. Everything has survived. And I said it's becoming more international. It's more Greek than ever because the Greek government, army and navy are there, and they even have a civil war in exile just outside Alexandria, between communists and non-communists. 1946, This is the last king of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III, arriving, being greeted by King Farouk, an old family friend. The Savoys and the house of Mohammed Ali were thick as thieves. And so the King of Italy lives in exile in Alexandria. He's buried in St. Catherine's Church. And this is a rather unbelievable tea party, I think in Russell tea, given by King Farouk to reconcile and introduce all the exiled royalty then living in Alexandria. From right to left, there is a Romanov prince, an Italian princess, the son of King Zog of Albania, Lika, Countess Calvina Bergoglio, a daughter of Victor Emmanuel III, King Farouk looking bored, Queen Geraldine of the Albanians, Prince Omar Farouk of the Ottoman Empire, one of King Farouk's sisters, and then I sort of give up on her. And you see an enormous Alexandrian tea party. It's partly to introduce the King of Albania and the King of Italy, because it was rather awkward because the King of Italy had invaded Albania in 1940. King Zora. This is the other side of the table. You have an Ottoman princess, another Romanov prince, another Italian princess, King Zog himself, Princess Fauzia of Egypt, I think, the beautiful sister of King Farouk, his favourite sister, then the King of Italy, and then the regal figure in the large hat is Sabiha Sultan, the beautiful Ottoman princess, who Mustafa Kemal is said to have asked to marry. There's no proof. And there was a whole Ottoman court in exile living in Alexandria. Memoirs have just been published about it all. It's really parties, clothes, drink and girls in the memoirs of Prince Ali Basid. So you see that all these, and somewhere there is the exiled Queen of Bulgaria, but I'm not sure about. All these companies felt, all these people felt quite secure in Alexandria. You lived a lot better and it appeared more secure than in Cold War Europe. However, I won't go into the downfall of Farouk. It's a familiar story. All of you, I think, he's still quite popular in 1944, 1945, but things go wrong. His entourage becomes, and I quote, very third class. Married to Zogev Nuchin after a party at Alice Savodaki's in 1945. King Farouk came late, goes often to parties, and further weakened above all by defeat in the 1948 First Arab-Israeli War, accusations of corruption, suffering in Europe. And even more than Farouk, Egyptians resented the vast British bases still in the canal zone. They could not bear the humiliation of foreign occupation. There had already been riots, very dangerous riots in 1947 in Alexandria. That is when the last British military, naval and air bases in Alexandria are closed. Sometimes soldiers were killed and attacked in the street. 25th of January 1952, British troops killed Egyptian policemen in Ismailia. Cairo explodes. Black Saturday. Cairo burns. Not Alexandria, but everybody knows there's going to be a denouement. The Peels of Alexandria write this. Security and British interests in the Middle East are being jeopardized for an unattainable objective, a secure base on the canal. In 1952, 5 prime ministers came and went in 5 months. The government is unraveling. There's a feeling of impending revolution. The king felt time was running out and warned the American ambassador, "You will all be sorry if I get turned out." In 1952, as in 1882, it's all partly about the diarchy between Cairo and Alexandria. and where the ruler's palace is. It's quite complicated to explain, but here are some photographs of Princess Tussun at the races, Princess Tussun at a charity, Alexandria about 1950, Ramadan meals for the poor, Prince Tussun, who now lives in Paris, handing prizes at the races. That is Princess Fauzia on the beach in Alexandria. Her husband was Farouk's last and possibly fatal Minister of Defense. Farouk was quite keen on the navy. He revives the Egyptian navy after the Second World War. But summer of 1952, he's in Montaza. The colonels, the army coup, possibly with American support, takes power in Cairo. What's he to do? He's probably already sent some money abroad. He wants to get from Montaza in the east of Alexandria, where he's with his wife and son, to the safety of Ras El Tin, where his royal yacht is, the Mahrusa, which has just been refitted at huge expense, just in time to take him into exile. So, that's Naguib reading the first proclamation. He's the man who had so loved driving himself. He's driven by a chauffeur at night, hiding his face from Montaza to Ras El Tin. And finally there he signs his application. The event is surveyed by the American ambassador, proof of American involvement. Everybody knows the game is up. The colonels are extremely merciful to Farouk. Britain doesn't want to intervene. It had intervened in 1882, but Farouk clearly is no longer useful. Nobody really stands by Farouk. And 25th of July, Ras El Tin is surrounded by tanks and by aircraft. 26th of July, Ali Maher comes with the ultimatum demanding abdication. Montaza surrenders. Sudanese guards at Ras El Tin put up a token resistance. Nasser said, "Let us spare Farouk and send him into exile. History will sentence him to death." And Ras El Tin, where the Mohammed Ali dynasty really begun in Alexandria, now witnessed its expulsion. He signs his abdication in the marble hall, and this is a photograph of him, his last military review. He's leaving Ras El Tin for the royal yacht. And hope. Now, I want to show the film. I can show you a film of the actual moment. Alexandria stops being a royal capital. Leaving Ras El Tin. All very orderly. He's wearing naval uniform as if he's appalled at the army's betrayal. The flag goes down. And he's taking the tug out to the Mahrusa. That was the end of Royal Alexandria and the beginning of the unravelling of the cosmopolitan fabric of the city. What his last words alleged were, "Your task will be difficult. It isn't easy, you know, to govern Egypt." And it was a good departure. I spoke to a naval officer who was there. It was a good departure. Like most officers in the Egyptian Navy, he loved Farouk. room. Every ship in the harbour hoisted its flags in farewell, and the palace staff wailed in lament, according to the The coup was not only a victory for the army and for new ideas, it seemed to be a victory for the Egyptian people. It was a victory of Cairo over Alexandria. The new regime almost immediately stopped the habit of the government moving to Alexandria for the summer, helped by the fact that air conditioning was becoming popular. And really that is the end of the story. Thank you very much. Any questions? Please join the Levantine Heritage Foundation. We hope to have a conference in Alexandria on its international role. Yes?
Can you go back to the photograph where they were all at the dinner table, please?
Yes.
Okay, the lady with the big hat.
Yes.
If you go, the lady with the big hat, if you go behind her, there's a gentleman and there's another lady there.
Yes.
In Roy?
Yes.
That lady is Queen Giovanna of Bulgaria.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very quickly, she is the mother of my godfather. That's why.
Her godfather lived as a boy in Alexandria, then moved to Spain.
He was 5 or 7.
Thank you very much. If you go to a village, there is the Royal Artillery in there, and they have a museum, and in the museum there is more than one gun that is written in it, made in Alexandria.
Really?
And it is mainly made from brass. And I believe during the time of Muhammad Ali, we were supplying Britain with weapons. And that's what I was told in the Royal Artillery. And the other thing is about Alexandria, during the Second World War, which started 38 to 45, London was bombed, Berlin was bombed. Everywhere there was a war. The only place that is you could breathe in was Alexandria. That's why in the film, Yakuban building, he said the fashion used to come from Alexandria to Europe. The other thing is, cinema started in Alexandria. They want to make Hollywood in Alexandria. We took Mizrahi. And then what happened, that when you open the studio must you have to go to there. Yeah. The thing is, you see, Alexandria was the most beautiful city in the Mediterranean. But everybody goes to Alexandria today, he can't complain about the lavish industry, the drains with no cover, the holes in the road. Could you please just convince me why did we reach that level? Thank you.
I don't know. I've read about it. Well, above all, overpopulation, that's it. And emigration.
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. Was fantastic. It brought back memories. I was born in Alexandria. I actually remember when Farouk was exiled.
Brilliant.
With Nariman, and they went to Capri. I remember when Nahas was the Prime Minister, and you were right, the government kept falling. We had a joke about it. Nahas has fallen every other week. The statue in Alexandria of Muhammad Ali is a replica of the same statue that there is in Kavala in Greece. Exactly the same. There are two statues. One is in Kavala and one in Alexandria. And I remember when Naguib talked to us and said, don't leave, everything's going to be okay. But unfortunately it wasn't in the end. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's a new book on Leslie Shelton, the wife of Abdul Monin, which says that at Abdul Monin's funeral, Naguib was in tears and said, we betrayed you, everything had gone wrong since 1952.
Well, you see, you really studied the Egyptian royal family. I'm not going to say what's in Egypt and what's in Alexandria, but I'm going to ask you a question. Because the reflection of the royal family in Egypt is not that good, actually. Yes. Because they say that it was the cause of everything happened to Egypt during the years, for years and years and years. So what is your opinion? Was it the Republic or the kingdom? Which one you prefer? And what the relationship actually was with England? Because we hear lots of things and we don't know what's right and what's wrong.
The British government and the Egyptian monarchy used each other for their own purposes. The British government to have a legitimising screen and the Egyptian monarchy to stay in power. Now, in my opinion, Arabi was far better than Khalifa Tawfiq. But it didn't work out that way. And one thing the Egyptian monarchy never wavered in is modernising, sending people to be educated in Europe, building schools, building universities. And things change very rapidly from year to year. Sometimes Farouk was popular, sometimes he eventually became detested. You see, it's very difficult to generalise. Each decade and ruler had its own reputation, good side, bad side. I think Alexandria was, despite all the suffering, I think Alexandria was far more interesting, dynamic after Muhammad Ali than before him.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mansel, you kindly agreed that I could make a point, which especially is so interesting to hear Alexandrians in this audience,
yes.
Helping, reminding us who these people are and what happened. I chair the International Friends of the Alexandria Library, and we meet in Alexandria every year in October. And so we've been going now since its inauguration in 2002. Over those years, we've been lucky enough to go inside and dine in the Ras Al Tin Palace. And in fact, we've been on the Maharuza. We were the first group ever to go on that ship, and I believe still are the only group that has been inside it. It is absolutely magnificent. But it's terrible news, and I think Alexandrians here should know, if you are expatriates, that it is intended that a new motorway is driven from outside the Alexandria Library at Silsila across the mouth of the ancient harbour, across Fort Kite Bay, which was in that picture, passing close to Ras Al Tin, to the naval base. Who will this benefit? Think of the view that is now going to be spoiled totally by a new road. People have tried to engage with the Navy to say why. But as many of us here know, Alexandria is the world's largest city without its own newspaper. There is no platform for the citizens to make their voices heard. Yeah. When it comes to a World Heritage Site, like the pyramids at Giza, the planned tunnel underneath must go through a heritage impact assessment. And that planned motorway must wait for that. And I'm sure the government would never drive a motorway through Memphis, or the Valley of the Kings, because all these are World Heritage Sites protected by the United Nations, by us.
Yes.
But Alexandria is not. No one is protecting it. My questions to the governorate have not been answered. Others trying to talk to the authorities have not been answered. And I think it's perhaps this type of community that should take back to your homes and say, why is this happening? And have asked those questions too. It would be good to see on the website of the embassy here an explanation that none of us hitherto have been able to get. Because maybe it was 1996, we, the international British friends, met in this room and we raised the problem about Villa Ambron. And we saved that villa, not quite sure why we did, because the governor listened and he allowed the planning to proceed for the garden, but not the villa. Well, Alexandrians, this is your battle. But the many British people I can see here who love that city, as I've come to love it over these 15 years, just feel that this is a road too far. It just should not happen. And I just wanted to share that with you. So thank you, Mr. Mansel.
Hello, I'm very interested in wanting to know when English became the language of education as opposed to French, and why French lasted so long.
French lasted so long because it was a global language from Buenos Aires to St. Petersburg. It goes on into the Second World War. I've met Alexandrians who said the only thing they wanted to do after the Second World War was go to Saint-Germain-des-Prés, see Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir. And then it starts declining with the power of America and the United Nations in New York after 1945. And so English starts taking over from 1960, and one of Nasser's nieces runs an English language school, I believe, in Alexandria, in an old villa. And guess what? Only English is allowed to be spoken in her language school.
There's a question there.
I've got a question and I've got an anecdote. I'll start with a question first. We know that Egypt was never a colony of Britain, but it was a protectorate.
Yes.
And yet, when I was at school, we used to have Lord Killen come on Thanksgiving Day and so on. And he was also always designated as the High Commissioner,
Yes.
the British High Commissioner. Was this wrong, or was it right?
He was High Commissioner until the Treaty of 1936. After that, he was Ambassador.
But how can he be a High Commissioner without Egypt being a colony?
Yes, because it was that's a very good question. I think it was wrong. I think I was wrong what I just said. I think from 1922 and the treaty between England and Egypt then, the British representative was an ambassador, but probably because the previous ones had been High Commissioners, they went on being called High Commissioner. It's wrong, because Egypt after 1922 is sending its own ambassadors abroad. That's when they bought the embassy in London.
Thank you. The anecdote is that when things got a little bit difficult between the British and King Farouk during the war, Lord Killen was in a meeting with King Farouk. He told him, "When are you going to get rid of your Italians, Your Majesty?" King Farouk answered, "Only when you get rid of your Italian."
Yeah.
Which is his wife.
His wife. We only just died.
Thank you, Dr. Mansel, for a big talk. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You've mentioned that the Egyptians at some point used to be like second-class citizens.
Yes.
And are we talking about the Egyptians in general or particular class, as in the probably the lower class? And the other thing is, at what point did the Egyptians manage to create equality, if you like? What helped them to do so?
Well, according to Naguib Mahfouz, what I quoted is the end of the capitulations in 1936. And generally, the boom in the Egyptian economy in the 1940s, in the war years, helped a lot. There are still terrifying stories, which I won't repeat, about race prejudice in Alexandria and Cairo, which I'm sure you've all heard. And of course it varied from class to class, and the class of Pashas, some of whom began to be native-born Egyptians, didn't suffer from such discrimination. And looking through the list of club members in the 1880s and 1890s, many varied different clubs in Alexandria, you see very few Egyptian or Turkish names. They start growing from, I would say, the First World War. But in some ways it was more mixed than the Gezira Club in Cairo, for example, because Alexandria was by its nature a mixed city, so the English were not totally, were less dominant than in Cairo.
Thank you very much for taking us through this interesting history. Have you any idea why the American were hesitant to see the back of King Farouk, and why the British choose not to intervene?
I think they thought, as many Egyptians thought, that Farouk was on the way out. These constantly changing governments, the police went on strike at times, a huge wealth gap, and they were above all concerned in winning the Cold War, and they thought the colonels and Nasser would be a better barrier against communism and Soviet expansion than Farouk was. And probably from their point of view, they were, at the beginning, they were right. Or so it seemed to them.
And why the British choose not to intervene?
They thought he was no longer useful. They thought he was a broken reed. As many Egyptians also thought. At times he would land from Europe after some holiday in Europe, and apparently he was told by the government, land at night, don't, there might be riots against you.
I have two questions, please. The first one, following up on the question before. You described that Egyptians were like second class. Second class, but with the books of Naguib Mahfouz, the Egyptians, despite how poor they were at that time, that they were kind of happy, or?
Well, that's what Naguib Mahfouz, I don't think they were happy when they were badly paid and the life expectancy was so low. But maybe in the summer months when a lot of Cairenes came to Alexandria, there was more work and more business. That was good for ordinary Egyptians.
The second question, because I met a lot of international students and we always discussed that. Was Egypt ever a Commonwealth country?
No.
How? Why?
Because it would have annoyed other European powers so much, and it would have annoyed Ottoman Turkey so much, and the Egyptians so much. They couldn't, but it was in the sterling area, I think, economically. And there were various legal arrangements that the two countries were really quite close in some aspects, like educational exchange and things like that.
And we thank together, first thank you for coming, but thanking Dr. Philippe Mansel for this very interesting talk.
Thank you.